Part 5 is the second half of a chapter presented on physical wellness. Again, due to the size of this chapter, we've broken it down into two different parts for easier learning and to help facilitate all of the content required in a manageable step within our program. In the second half of Part 5, we will continue to explore concepts of physical wellness. We left off in the first section of Part 5 talking about muscular strength, and now we resume to continue talking about other aspects of physical wellness and specifically start with functional muscular anatomy. Refer back to the learning objectives that were stated in the beginning of Part 5 to be mindful of what the main concepts are when we are considering those components of physical wellness. Since we are talking about physical components to wellness, we have to understand that this would include doing muscular work. We are not really trying to make our clients bodybuilders, so we really only want to be concerned with the functional capacity of our client. Now, functional training has become a popular buzzword in the fitness industry today, but we will look more scientifically at functional muscular anatomy by describing parts of the muscle and how they move. This involves understanding muscle tissue types or parts, as well as resistance training and muscular contractions. We'll talk about different modes of resistance training, and in order to effectively understand this, we've got to be able to understand muscular contraction types. And the first type is isometrics. Now, you might be more familiar with isometrics than you think. This is a static type of training that describes the ability for the muscle to produce tension without any change in its length. A good example of this would be to have an exerciser hold a barbell at the midpoint of an arm curl to produce tension in the biceps. While being held statically, the muscle is contracting to fight gravity, but there's no lengthening or shortening seen in the muscle. This type of training is somewhat common, but has one major drawback in that it tends to increase heart rate to really high levels, and this can be a concern for some of your clients. Isotonic training is a dynamic form of resistance training and includes contractions when the muscle shortens and moves the bones to which they are attached. With isotonic contractions or exercises, we see that tension in the muscle remains unchanged, but the muscle length does. This involves both concentric and eccentric contractions. Free weight training is another common form of strength training and helps to develop strength as well as the size of skeletal muscles. This mode of training uses the forces of gravity in the form of barbells or dumbbells, typically to oppose the force generated by muscles through either concentric or eccentric contractions. The benefits of free weight training are similar to those seen in other forms of strength training, including increased muscle mass or size, tendon and ligament strength development, bone density improvements, as well as improvements to muscle tone and posture. Balance is also extremely variable in free weight training and is therefore more beneficial for some clients. Free weight training also requires the establishment of movement patterns in their proper sequencing to be both safe and effective. Isokinetic training involves muscular contractions where the velocity or speed of the movement remains constant while force is allowed to vary throughout the range of motion. The usefulness of isokinetic training is limited for use in humans due to the fact that isokinetic contractions are rare within the body, and this form of training is usually confined to clinical or laboratory settings on isolated muscles or muscle groups. This also involves the use of specialized equipment to regulate speed or velocity during the contractile process. Circuit training is the combination or use of high-intensity resistance training programs with an emphasis on impacting the aerobic energy system. Typically, circuits are made up of anywhere from 9 to 12 different stations or exercises. This number can vary according to the program design of the circuit. Circuit training can utilize exercise machines, hydraulic equipment, free weights, elastics, calisthenics, or any combination of these items. Circuit training also allows for creativity in the expression of program designs as we see themes sometimes applied to circuits. This could include kickboxing techniques or specific programs to target cardiovascular fitness. Now, in order to meet the ACSM guidelines for physical activity, the intensity level for circuit training programs should be in the 40 to 85% of 1 rep of max. Circuit training programs are designed to be simple for exercisers to follow while targeting fat loss and building muscular strength and cardiovascular fitness. A circuit routine would be the completion of several exercises prescribed with rest time factored in. There are many ways that circuits can be devised. Examples include push-pull options, total body routines, or agonist-antagonist muscle group work. Studies show that circuit training is the most time-efficient way to enhance cardiovascular fitness and muscular endurance specifically. This can be a significant component for your client to consider. Cardiovascular training programs make use of exercises that are designed to target your client's aerobic energy system. This form of programmed exercise refers to the use of oxygen and will typically provide benefits to your client's metabolic profile. Most types of exercise have an aerobic component and by definition are performed at moderate levels of intensity for extended periods of time. It's also good to know the differences between aerobic and anaerobic exercise. Generally more intense, anaerobic modes are not intended to target cardiorespiratory fitness as much as aerobic exercise does. This also requires an understanding of aerobic capacity, which is the functional capacity of the cardiorespiratory system overall. Specifically defined, aerobic capacity is the ability to remove and utilize oxygen from circulating blood. To measure maximal aerobic capacity, an exercise physiologist or skilled trainer would perform what we call a VO2 max test. This testing protocol measures oxygen consumption and transport. Cardiovascular variables are programmed in an exercise program design in the same way that resistance training is, with the expression of intensity being based on VO2 max instead of 1 rep of max. Modes of exercise to target muscular endurance involve those used to specifically increase stamina and endurance overall. Exercises for endurance training tend to be more aerobic in nature as opposed to anaerobic types. By definition, muscular endurance is the ability of a muscle or a muscle group to exert or sustain repeated contractions against the resistance of a force for an extended period of time. As such, muscular endurance is one of the assessments performed on clients prior to beginning an exercise program or before writing an exercise program design. To assess muscular endurance, the client would typically do the curl-up or push-up test. These tests can be relatively simple and involve a timed count of repetitions performed. Intensity is another exercise variable and is programmed into both cardiovascular and resistance training programs as part of a well-planned program design. With resistance training, intensity is expressed as a percent of 1 rep of max. With cardiovascular exercise programming, intensity is expressed as a percent of VO2 max. While this is an important variable to know for programming exercise, be aware that we're not necessarily doing just fitness training with our client. This is just one small piece of the puzzle that you put together in your client's physical activity profile or their wellness plan. Duration is simply a component of time for exercise. This is yet another program exercise variable and will depend on many factors. Your client's time allotted for exercise will be the main driver for duration parameters. More specifically, duration relates to the length of an exercise session and must account for repetitions, sets, and rest time for a single bout of physical activity. It's pretty typical for resistance or cardiovascular training programs to last anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes in duration. Frequency refers to how often your client should exercise. After any form of exercise, the body completes a process of rebuilding and repair. Being able to determine the frequency of exercise is important in order to find the balance required that provides just enough stress for the body to adapt and allows enough rest time for healing. In this way, frequency is another program variable to factor into program design. Over the past few years, the ACSM has changed guidelines for exercise frequency. It is now recommended that clients engage in regular physical activity most days of the week. Specificity is actually an exercise principle, and it simply states that exercising a certain body part or component of the body primarily develops that specific part. The principle of specificity implies that to become better at a particular exercise or skill, you must perform the exercise or skill proficiently in practice or training first. An example would be targeting the muscular system by doing muscular work in the form of resistance training, or coaching a client to train on a spin bike in order to specifically influence both cardiovascular fitness and those muscles that are used during cycling. In this way, specificity is a factor of exercise selection and will determine which exercises a trainer or coach includes within a program design. Activity logs can be important for our client in order to be able to track exercise history and to provide a reference for work done. This also allows you to be able to monitor your client's physical activity programs as a method of checks and balances. Activity logs can also help your clients to be clear about what's expected from them, but this requires that you actually assess these activity logs from time to time to ensure your client's understanding. After activity logs have been maintained for several months, it can be very internally motivating for clients to refer back to these documents for both motivation and inspiration because they can see where progress has been made. Flexibility refers to the range of motion at a joint or a series of joints and the muscles that cross or act upon those joints. Flexibility is also seen as variable between individuals, especially in terms of those differences seen in muscle length and in multi-joint muscles. Flexibility in some joints can be increased to a certain degree by stretching. For some clients, quality of life is enhanced by improving and maintaining a good flexibility program to improve range of motion and joint health. Overall flexibility should be developed with specific joint angles with the needs of the client kept in mind. A loss of flexibility can be a predisposing factor for some physical conditions such as orthopedic concerns or balance disorders. Flexibility program is part of a well-planned program design and should include consideration of joint structure, ligaments, tendons, muscles, skin, prior injuries, and your client's age, among other variables. Flexibility is one of the easiest ways for a client to start the journey into a regular physical fitness routine. There still is debate over whether stretching should occur before or after exercise, and in reality the correct answer would be both. But there is a disclaimer here. We should encourage clients to do dynamic, slow, controlled movements to stretch muscles before doing resistance training, and then to perform static stretching where positions are held for a specified amount of time after a workout. Different modes of stretching are included in great detail in your manual. In general, a good flexibility program should improve posture while eliminating muscular tension or tightness. Flexibility is usually easier for clients to embrace as a fitness variable when there are other barriers present to doing traditional resistance or cardiovascular modes of training. Knowing the dangers of obesity or those tied to being overweight, we definitely want to be aware of our client's body composition. There are different ways that we can assess body composition, and your manual includes descriptions of waist-to-hip ratios as well as ACSM body composition standards. But assessing body fat requires a few skills and some equipment in order to complete. More specifically, body composition is used to describe the percentages of fat and fat-free mass as components of the body overall. Body composition can then be viewed as, more simply put, as just an expression or ratio of fat mass to lean body mass. For individuals whose body composition is less than ideal, it's been found that these individuals have more health risks than those in the ideal category of body composition. To understand what ideal body composition means, you must first know what the differences are in terms of guidelines for men and women, and then further by understanding the differences between being obese or simply overweight. Refer to your manual for these guidelines. We'll conclude the last half of Part 5 with some really fundamental information on nutrition. Now, we recommend the Fitness Nutrition Coach program from NESTA as the standard currently in the industry to understand nutrition more completely and specifically for use in the coaching process. Now, on a basic level, we and our clients know the fundamentals of how the body requires nutrients for basic functions, but now we have to turn to the specific macronutrients in order to provide direction and guidance for the client. A good, thought-out, and planned wellness-based diet would include the elements that you see listed on the slide before you. You may need to research information to provide your client direction and guidance on such topics as the micronutrients or vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It would also be useful to have certain tools to use in order to help your client with their nutritional needs, and the Food Guide Pyramid is one such source that you can use to help compile a plan for your client to help them structure their eating in a way that allows them to eat more healthy. Carbohydrates play a number of important roles within the body, and two of the primary functions of carbohydrates include providing glucose for the brain and also to provide energy for working muscles. Carbohydrates are generally broken down into three different subtypes, including simple, complex, and fiber. You'll find that your clients have a lot of misconceptions about carbohydrates and that you have to intervene to redirect or guide your client to dispel myths and to clear up misinformation. One best practice may be to instruct clients to search food labels for fiber content instead of overall carbohydrate content listed under the carbohydrate category and to aim for consumption of the proper amount of fiber each day. The guidelines for fiber intake are generally in the 30 to 35 grams per day range. Now, depending on which information you refer to, you might find slight variations in the recommendations, but it's not important to be so hung up on a gram or two, but that the client is aware of the need to consume fiber in alignment with basic guidelines. Protein is often misunderstood as well. The role of protein in the body is essentially one of repairing tissue. When you consider the damage done on a cellular level to muscle tissue, you can see the role that protein would play in this process of repair. Proteins are also sometimes referred to as amino acids, and these are the building blocks of protein. An essential amino acid is one that cannot be synthesized by the body and therefore must be consumed by the client from within their diet. 8 amino acids have been identified as essential for human function. Because of the amount of information tied to protein intake, we strongly urge you to research all of the information and science being produced to understand protein and to provide guidelines for your client. It has become really easy for us to make fat a villain when we consider our clients and their food intake. Now, up until recently, fat was thought to be detrimental to sports performance and overall health while causing weight gain when consumed in excessive amounts. Now we come to know that fat plays a crucial role in the body for not just performance but overall health. One suggestion for the client is to have them focus on the quality of the fats that they consume more so than the quantity. Aside from protein, fat is the only other essential macronutrient that we need to bring into our diet in the way of essential fatty acids. And dietary fat provides the essential fatty acids that cannot be produced or synthesized by the body, and they are consumed by way of food intake. Your manual describes the 3 different types of fat in more detail. One of the more important aspects to understanding fat is to coach the client on the dangers of trans fat. The process of hydrogenation or partial hydrogenation incorporates hydrogen to liquid unsaturated fats in order to promote greater stability and shelf life. But the problem with trans fats is that the body can't process them and they tend to get hung up in parts of the GI tube. Since trans fats are not essential, they should be avoided because they do not promote good health and more specifically contribute to increased risk of coronary artery disease by raising levels of LDL cholesterol while lowering good HDL cholesterol. While research over consumption of trans fats continues in terms of uncovering its dangers, another best practice is to coach your client on how to identify trans fats by looking for the word hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated on food labels. It should be both obvious and clear to see how water intake and hydration status are important to our clients. Water is the most important nutrient as it accounts for 50 to 60% of overall body mass. Lean body mass or body tissues are about 75% water by mass, and adipose or fat tissue is about 5% by mass. Fluid loss can occur through sweating, and depending on locations, factors such as heat and humidity can contribute to dehydration or underhydration. Prevention for your client means to first establish awareness of what hydration needs are. This will also require that you assess your client's water intake to provide suggestions for increasing it, as most clients will fall short of daily recommendations. Although most clients will be shocked at the amount of water suggested in the form of guidelines, the actual totals are 50 to 75% of their body weight in ounces each day. For clients who are more active, intake is more toward the higher end of this requirement. It should make sense that water intake is determined by the weight of the client. The old adage or saying that 8 8-ounce glasses might be appropriate for someone who weighs maybe 130 pounds, but not for someone with metrics greater in terms of body weight or body mass. Physical wellness is really important, obviously, to the client because it's part of that holistic approach that we recommend for delivering coaching services. Components of wellness that are tied to physical health will drive the majority of interactions that you share with your clients. Therefore, it's pretty important to be informed on exercise science, but to also stay informed with continuing education. Again, this chapter only seeks to scratch the surface of what's required in terms of knowledge for coaching clients through physical wellness concerns. We recommend that you first refine your behavior change strategies before mastering all aspects of physical wellness, because it's more likely that clients will need behavior change skills first to be able to change anything specifically tied to their physical wellness. Furthermore, physical wellness should not be approached until behavior change can be viewed as effective in terms of getting your client to be more physically well.